interview he did actually, because Cape Town, somehow I can't pick up Power FM.
Yeah.
And the last interview that I heard that he did was when there was a big issue in Mamelodi. And he actually interviewed one of the, I don't want to call people names, but I think it's a his name is Buskeke.
Yeah.
And when I interviewed this guy, it was like on fire. And I remember that vividly. But yeah, I mean, like you said, a legend has fallen. It's quite sad.
No, definitely. Yeah. So I gave you that song. And the last one was just again, we are still in the Women's Month. Again, to all the beautiful ladies that are joining us today. Happy Women's Month. I hope you are doing the best out of it, just to acknowledge that you are powerful beyond measure. You are incredible. We love you. We love all of you very, very much. So thank you so much for the contribution that each and every one of you is making. Now, for those who are joining us for the first time on Wealth Conversation, I say welcome. Feel at home. This is home. So the whole idea really around Wealth Conversation was started two months back, I think, or 3 months back. It was really to provide a platform where we can have these discussions around wealth creation, around generational wealth, and the ingredients that go into it. And like today, I mean, we did the session, I think last week, when we did the wealth protection dinner. It was our first time, and the response has been amazing, to the point where we thought we need to bring it back again, because, you know, we can create wealth, but if we don't have a solid foundation, that wealth basically won't, progress to generational wealth. So that is why we are doing this. And I think also, I don't know, you know, maybe we might end up doing a session every month. We don't know, you know, we might.
We can.
Oh.
Yes, we can.
Are you back? Okay. This thing is inally jealous. No. It can hear that we want to talk serious things all of a sudden, you know.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, so you were saying about the feedback.
No, I was saying the feedback was overwhelming. So if you decide to have it as a monthly thing, you're welcome. We're always available to assist.
Okay, fantastic. So welcome to everybody to our wealth protection dinner, which is the part 2, where we're going to have, I think today we're going to just have a robust engagement. Ausi Remi has also prepared, you know, slides and some case studies. I asked her to just put that together so that at least it comes alive. We can be able to see what goes on to a lot of these questions that we have. I also just want to mention to everybody that the book is available. It's only 160 Rand, so please get yourself a copy, especially these days where we're definitely battling with our finances. So please get this. It's Financial Planning for What? Amazing book. It has debt consolidation, debt cancelling, it has black tax, it has qualifying syndrome. So amazing and incredible book that you can have for yourself. The other announcement is just to remind you that next week we are having the corporate wealth dinner, and we'll be having a powerful lady, Ceci Lulu Leklape, who will be joining us just to give us an indication in terms of how do you climb the corporate ladder, and some of the things that she has picked up, you know, in her career, which is amazing. So please be on the lookout for that. So the proper flyer will be out tomorrow, and we can start to register for that. I really encourage you to do that. The other thing is that I just wanted to remind you that the episodes are recorded, so you can get all the episodes, the dinners that we are having on my YouTube channel, Gav Talks Property and Finances. Gav Talks Property and Finances. So please go and check out the YouTube channel, and please subscribe. Tell everybody that you know to subscribe as well. There's a lot of content that is there, and if you missed our first dinner, please go back and go and watch those episodes. It's going to help you immensely, you know, so please be on the lookout for that. The other thing I just wanted to mention, those who are following Gav's Financial Sermons, that there's a podcast that I've started as well within that, so you can be able to check out some of the episodes. I'll be doing a lot of podcasts, a lot of episodes on that podcast as well. And there's merchandising that is on the way as well for Gav's financial sermon. So we just want to, you know, speak abundantly around our finances and just to have lots of money and be rich and be wealthy. And that's what we want. All right. So please be on the lookout for that. So today, also me, I'm obviously going to take it. I'm just going to give you the platform, and then you can be able to start running with that. Should I share our case study for the day?
Yes, I think you can share the first slide where I'm introducing Bab Khumalo. For the benefit of those who are joining us for the first time, Bab Khumalo is a typical businessman from the township. We can all relate. We've all seen, or we've come across some of the. You want to put it as a slideshow?
Okay.
I just want one slide. Yeah, just the first slide.
Are we all good?
We good? Okay, let me just introduce Bab Khumalo. So Bab Khumalo is a typical, like I said, is a typical business owner from the township. And I gave a bit of his profile. He is a former teacher, former taxi boss. When I say former, it's because now as we speak, he's deceased. And he was a property investor. So quite a, very smart guy. He divorced his wife 5 years ago, his first wife, and he was now married to a new wife. They've been married for 5 years. They're married out of community of property with accrual. He has 3 adult children from his previous marriage. He's got 1 minor child from his current marriage. He does have a maintenance obligation in terms of his divorce settlement with Mrs. X. When I say Mrs. X, it's Mrs. Khumalo, the ex. And when he passed away, his estate value was about 20 mil, and he's got about liabilities of about 10 million. He has a family house in Soweto where his adult children are currently residing. And his former wife is actually in an old age home because she's got a bit of health issues there. So the children decided to actually put her in the old age home. And when I indicated he's a former teacher, so he's got a preservation fund of about 3 million rand. So I think let's look at this profile and we take the notes out of that, Gavin. And one of the things that's important to look at is that he's divorced.
Yeah.
He's married in terms of he's married out of community of property with accrual, and then he's got blended family issues. So he's got new wife with child. He's got ex-wife with children, and obviously the new wife also came with other children. That's what we call blended families. Yeah. And then we've got a challenge there. We've got a family home meaning when he got divorced, he left his adult children is in his home, and that is their family house.
Yeah.
And then I introduced the concept that he's got a preservation because he's no longer a teacher. He's actually a former teacher, but he didn't take his pension monies, and he actually preserved them.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple of challenges that we can unpack from there. I think maybe let's engage around the profile, and then we can actually now unpack the types of marital regimes.
Yeah.
We'll unpack assets that form part of the estate.
Yeah.
And then we'll go into winding up the deceased estate itself.
Okay.
We look at liquidity. The last time when we had the dinner, I introduced the concept of liquidity, which I think for the benefit of other people, we can actually unpack it again.
Yes.
What does liquidity mean?
Yes.
And then we'll kill a couple of myths. I came up with about 3 myths, which I think we need to actually unpack, and then we take it from there. And there is also a couple of questions that we can talk about when we get into the marital regime. So I think I'll leave it back in your hands. So I just gave the scenario of who we're talking about and the type of things that we're going to be engaging around.
Okay, I think maybe let's touch on that. Maybe let's deal with the terminologies first, because there are obviously first timers that are joining us for the dinner for the first time. So we want to dish them up the property as well. So you mentioned liquidity, you mentioned pension fund, preservation fund, provident fund. What is the difference?
Okay, so we're talking about liquidity. Liquidity is actual cash. It's money in the estate. So liquidity, we would be money in the bank account. It would be shares that can be liquidated. It could be actual cash, proceeds from pension monies. That is what we call liquid. It's liquid money.
Yeah.
And then we talk about pension preservation. So I think when you are employed, you all know that we contribute towards a pension fund or a provident fund. And when you leave, a lot of times people cash up their pension monies. But in this case, Mr. Khumalo didn't cash his pension monies. He actually went into a preservation fund. So a preservation fund is a tool that is available where you can actually put in your pension monies until you get to a retirement age. Then you can access them at that point. So when he left his former employer, which was the Department of Education, he didn't take his pension monies and start the business with it. He actually preserved that money, which means he set it aside, which is a nice tool that a lot of people, use it, especially if you are young and you're changing jobs. I think it's very ideal that you use the preservation fund and not use it to go open a spaza shop. Pension money, pension monies.
Definitely. So also maybe to also obviously before we proceed, now when one has then the preservation fund, and I have this thing and I get to retirement age and then I pass away, what happens to that fund? Does my family get it? What happens in that regard?
This is an important thing that you're asking me, Gavin. There's always a confusion. I'm going to address the preservation fund issue and also people that have pension monies. Because a lot of times people are confusing money in the pension fund as the wealth in their estate. So there's two different, it's two different aspects. Money in the estate is money that, that comes, it would be your fixed property, your money in the bank account, shares, etc. And those are governed by a different act altogether. Money in the pension, which is now the pension preservation, the pension fund, and the provident fund. Those are governed by what we call the Pension Fund Act. And in terms of the act itself, the act actually dictates how you need to actually, you can deal with the nomination of those pension proceeds. Pension proceeds do not fall into the estate. And a lot of times people confuse that. People would say, you know what, I still have a bond, but if I die, money from my employer will come and actually cover for that liquidity issue. That's not true, because the money in your pension fund will be dealt with completely different. And there is an important document that we need to complete when you are still employed. It's called a beneficiary nomination form. That document is important. I always tell people, when I look at, typically, let's look at our parents. Most of the time, they were teachers, and the first time that they completed a beneficiary nomination form is when they gave them that letter of employment and they were starting to work. Life happened. They've got children, they got married, they got divorced, but they never actually went back to update their nomination form. It's very important that you keep it up to date. I always say to people, when we look at your will, the first thing that I would also ask is, did you nominate beneficiaries in your pension? Is it up to date? When I say up to date, you wanted to keep it as relevant and as current as possible. Let me tell you another challenging part that people don't understand. That's when there's always dispute around the pension monies. A nomination form is exactly that. It is a nomination where you are guiding the trustees of the pension fund in terms of how the money must flow. if you've got children that you are supporting somewhere, and in the nomination form you fail to actually mention them, the trustees will look at the financial dependence. So you can't somehow dodge those illegitimate children that you are hiding and supporting behind the closed doors. Unfortunately, the trustees, they normally, when you look at pension monies, it doesn't pay quickly. It takes a little bit of time because the trustees are doing their own investigation and they are looking at financial dependence. That's important to note. So that doesn't come into your will. And you know what, other people want to mention it just for control in J. So we do mention it and we just place it on record for the benefit of the executive. But it's not money in the estate.
So the smaller Yana skeletons are going to come out?
They definitely do come out.
Nice. Okay.
Remember in the last dinner, I said, when somebody passes away, where do people go? They go to the bank, they go to the employer.
Yeah.
Those two.
Yeah.
So that child that you were supporting behind the is likely to go knock at the employer as well.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful.
Okay. So those are the two concepts.
Yeah. All right. Cool. No, I think we can proceed, and then because this it's hot today. We can proceed. Must I move to the next slide?
Yes, you can move to the next slide. The next slide we're talking about now Bab Khumalo, who's now married out of community of property. There's a question. Do you want me to take questions in between?
Yes, please.
So the question is around, it says, can I nominate a trust as a beneficiary for pension funds? So the answer is, there is beneficiary funds that are available depending on the employer. And most of the time, those beneficiary funds, they've got a cap. They actually, they terminate at the age of majority most of the time.
Okay.
However, some people do make, they make it a point that, I've got, prodigal children. I don't think they can run with money. I don't want this money going to them. Yeah. You are able to nominate, but you need to be very explicit in your nomination form. But these, they are, from fund to fund, they may differ. Other employers, they've got an arrangement with certain beneficiary fund institutions, and you're able to nominate it. Sometimes, if you don't have that kind of an arrangement, you can put it as you can nominate it there that you want it to via the testamentary trust. So it can be done, but like I said, it depends on the pension fund itself and in terms of how they actually structure it. So yes, definitely you can do that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Wonderful.
All right. So we can move to the next slide. To the next slide, we're talking, remember I indicated Bab Khumalo is married in terms of out of community of property with accrual. Yeah. So the next slide is still not on, I'm not sure if you're able to do it slideshow on your side, because this is an important slide.
Is it, is it this one? Let me check.
Number 2, marital regimes. On my side is not a slideshow, hey?
It's not a slideshow on your side. Okay, let us see. Let me check. Let me try again.
I can try.
Yeah, because you have the right
on my end.
Yeah, you have the right to do that. You can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I must just find it. I must just find it first because we end up opening so many things.
No,
all right.
Yeah.
I've got it.
Just of course, please keep the questions coming. So as we go along, we'll pick up your questions. So don't be shy. Just please ask those questions. The merrier the better.
Is it on a slideshow? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
It's on a slideshow on my side. Is it fine on your side? Okay.
It's fine.
So this is quite an important slide. Yes. Okay. So we've got, in South Africa, we've got different types of marital regimes that are recognized. We've got the customary marriage, which we touched in detail the last time, but I will just touch on it, so a customary marriage in terms of South African law, it is recognized. It's got its own challenges. It is ideal that you register it. So that's why we always say the legal consequences sometimes is tricky if it's not registered. So when you've got it registered, it's easy to actually prove the marriage, and it's also easy in terms of how it needs to flow. So that's customary marriages. And then we've got civil marriages. Civil marriages, we've got two types. We've got in community of property. So most of the customary marriages that are registered, a lot of people just leave them as in community of property. So the laws of in community of property might apply on a customary marriage. However, that is not necessarily the default. Remember, we spoke about now customary marriages that are polygamous, and there was a whole lot of drama around it. So those ones, obviously, they would either be, they would be out of community of property for the, for the structure actually to make sense. Then we've got out of community of property with or without accrual. So with accrual, it means we are saying, Gavin, today you and I are going to get married, and we are deciding that we want to marry with accrual. Meaning you've got your assets. Your assets actually do not come into the matrimonial pool. My assets that I come with do not come into the matrimonial pool. From today onward, as we move onward, we are actually building wealth together. So that is the difference between in community of property with out of community of property with accrual. Then we've got out of community of property without accrual. That one typically means saka ke saka, sahau ke sahau. There is no other way where we mixing together, if that makes sense. Okay. So the legal consequences of this marriage is quite simple. It's straightforward. The civil marriage, you are able to prove them. You are able to dissolve them. If you want to get divorced, it's very easy. And then we move to the religious marriages. Religious marriages, what we're talking about here, typically we're talking about marriage in terms of Islamic law. So also it follows the same principle, register it, then it will follow, whatever marital regime that goes into. I had a very interesting visit at the Muslim Judicial Council, I think about 2 years ago, just to understand how Muslim marriages work and how they deal with their estates. Very interesting, very complex as well. Very complex. It's a highly specialized field, and obviously, it makes sense that you take it to somebody who actually understands the concept of Islam and some of the legal jargons within the actual institution, which is now Islamic law. And then we've got the last one, which we're saying, it's life partnership, that Faten set up. It's not a recognized institution in terms of marriage. However, in terms of other purposes, it could be recognized, that partner could be recognized as a spouse. Particularly when we're talking to pension fund monies. Remember, I spoke about financial dependent. It could be, they could be somehow where they are recognized. So this is an important slide. I think, for the benefit of people to understand their marital regimes, it's quite clear. If you are married in terms of customary, if it's not registered, legal consequences are a bit tricky. If it's registered, you understand the legal consequences that might be applicable. So that's the marital regime.
Ausi Remi,
back to Bab Khumalo.
Ausi Remi, before you go there, can we just maybe just let us clarify, especially when it comes to customary marriages. When is that marriage deemed valid? Well, what happens for it to be recognized? To say, all right, now we are married, COP. When is that happening?
So that's the default, hey? The COP is the default of customary marriages. But remember I said, there's 3 requirements that must be met in terms of the recognition of customary marriages law. Those requirements are very straightforward, meaning, once all the 3 requirements are met, it is seen as a marriage. The challenge is when it's not registered. That's when we start having disputes. I mean, we've got the WHP coming to mind, that, all of a sudden the family decides, actually, we didn't do this. And if you had gone and registered it, it becomes an easier process. I think I've also had encountered people who struggled to get divorced out of that structure. So for you to get divorced, then you must register it, then get divorced. And I'm not sure there's a growing trend where people, after the spouse has passed away, they go and register the marriage so that it could be, in inverted commas, actually recognized, and they are recognized as a spouse. So there's a lot of, gray area. So ideally, you want to register it. So the 3 requirements are: you must be 18 and above, have given consent. Lobola must be negotiated. And the marriage must be celebrated.
Oh, celebration, very important.
Celebration is important, because some people would say, no, and we paid half-unyana, but you didn't complete the whole requirement. Is that marriage?
Okay.
Can you see? So other people do that, maybe for financial purposes, maybe they don't have enough to complete the whole process. Then, they go and register it. The minute it's registered, then, you are able to prove that you are actually married. So it is important. It's very tricky. The tricky part about customary marriage is, today I would be saying this, tomorrow there might be a court case. And in South Africa, we look at decided cases, and they form part of the law.
Okay.
So it is a growing area of the law. Very fascinating.
Right.
Lot of opportunity in that space.
Okay. Now we can move on to Bab Khumalo.
Okay. All right. So Bab Khumalo is married in terms of out of community with accrual, meaning now Bab Khumalo, between him and the new spouse, what Bab Khumalo came with into the marriage, which is now 5 years ago, stays as his assets. So the family house that was from the previous marriage is not going to be part of a dispute with the new missus, because it's a house outside the estate, in the accrual. But now the very important factor that a lot of times people forget: when you pass away and you are married in terms of out of community of property with accrual, the surviving spouse has a maintenance claim. So it's either the maintenance claim or an accrual claim. So in this case, the current missus has an accrual claim against the estate. So I mentioned the maintenance claim of the ex-spouse, and I mentioned an accrual claim of the current spouse. Those are claims that will take precedence when we're dealing with winding up the estate of Bab Khumalo. So that is an expense that a lot of times people don't actually cater for. So it is important. When you are divorced, you need to understand what is in your divorce settlement, because you might need to cater it. When you pass away, that obligation doesn't disappear. When you actually now pass away, there is an accrual claim. You need to cater for it. So if Bab Khumalo decides, you know what, this wife, 5 years, whatever, I'm actually going to leave everything to my children, Mrs. Khumalo, the new one, has an accrual claim against the estate. What does that mean? Mr. Khumalo came with 15 million into the marriage. Mrs. Khumalo came with nothing. So now we're going to have to calculate the two. Mrs. Khumalo has 5 million. He came with nothing, with a 0. So we start her base with a 0. And then Bab Khumalo had 15. So their estate, when he passed away, grew to 20 million. So which means now we need to do a calculation around the growth of 5 5 million. That needs to be catered for because it's a claim that she will actually institute against the estate. So it's quite important when we look at expenses that come with death. It's those kind of expenses that a lot of times people wouldn't have catered for. So it's maintenance claim and an accrual claim, and they take precedence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we move to the next. I think this one is very important, and I think we unpacked it a bit. And I think Lesogo's question also came. You know, this slide actually answers Lesogo's question to a certain extent, talking about, you know, what comes into the estate and what doesn't come into estate. So we spoke about the pension fund and where it can flow into. We spoke about assets in the estate. And on this slide, what I wanted to touch on is interstate succession. So let's go back to Bab Khumalo's scenario. For argument's sake, Bab Khumalo passed away, did not leave a will, he died intestate. So what would be the challenges with him passing away without a will? So remember now we spoke about, you know, he's married, he's got blended family issues.
Yeah.
What will happen when he passes away? So the first thing that we need to look at is his marital regime is important. So he's married out of community with accrual. We look at now people that are actually going to be inheriting in terms of Interstate Succession Act.
Yeah.
Interstate Succession Act is quite clear in terms of who will inherit. Mrs. Khumalo, the new one, has one child with Bab Khumalo, but she also has 2 children that she came with into the marriage. So in this instance, we look at the challenge here is when you inherit from an interstate succession, the act is clear and actually dictates who will get what. So now we look at the marital regime.
Yeah.
And then we look at blood relation. So another challenge that comes with Black people is we don't do formal adoption. So those 2 children that Mrs. came with into the marriage, they just came.
Yeah.
They just came, they live with them, but there is no formal adoption. So those children will not be seen as Kubabu Khumalo. So they will be excluded.
So they're getting nothing.
The heirs, in terms of they get nothing. They are not his children,
Okay.
and he did not adopt them. Yeah. So what the heirs, the act itself says. Fine. We look at blood relations. Number 1, the only people that will get that are not blood relations to Mr. would be Umam Khumalo and adopted children. We've established that he didn't adopt those children. So now we look at Mrs. Khumalo, the new one. We look at those 3 children that Bab Khumalo left in Soweto, his adult children. Those are the ones that will inherit in terms of interstate succession. So here, that's when we look at challenges that normally comes with a stepmom and stepchildren.
Yeah.
You can imagine now having to share the assets. I mean, this could have been avoided. Could have been avoided with drawing up a will and being clear in terms of your instructions. Who needs to get what?
Yeah. But
a lot of times, people don't actually cater for that. That's why we have blended family issues, and we've got challenges around inheritance. Let's not lose focus, Gavin. We're talking about wealth creation and wealth preservation, generation to generation. But you go and you pass away interstate with an estate value of 20 million. People start fighting for it. This is when now you pass away with the wealth that you were trying to create.
It follows that. Yeah.
start fighting around those. So it could be avoided. When you've got a blended family, it's important that, you know what, make sure you draw up a will, you dictate in terms of who needs to get what, so that you don't have to be dealing with those disputes. Back to Bab Khumalo. There's a house in Soweto, a beautiful house in Soweto. I think the beautiful place in Soweto is Meadowlands, eh?
No,
so he's got a beautiful home there.
It's in Deep Kloof extension.
Okay, it got Deep Kloof.
Yeah.
So he's got a beautiful home in Deep Kloof, where he left his adult children, and now he has passed away. And now, you know, that the children are deciding now, do we want to sell this or we don't want to sell this? It's a lot of times where we're dealing with family house disputes. And these could be avoided by actually drawing up a will and dictating what needs to happen to that asset. Okay. Is it clear on that side?
No, it's very clear. It's very clear. Yeah. Maybe just to quickly ask something then, while we're still on that family house saga.
Yes.
When it comes to, because yesterday I posted when I did a teaser there, you know, I just mentioned somebody saying, you know what, maybe Bab Khumalo said the house must go to the last born. I think sometimes we have this last born thing, that it must go to the last born, and then now the others are married. When they're married, I think now there's pillow talk. Okay, but you know that house in Meadowlands, in Alivelu, why don't you guys sell it?
Yeah.
You know, so the issue then becomes, it starts somewhere down.
So those are real things, you know, there are real challenges given that we come across a lot of times. So Bab Khumalo said, hey, this house must go to the last born. Did he put it in a will? If it's in a will, then this house will be transferred from the deceased estate to the last born's name. Last born gets married to so-and-so, and together with the wife, they decide to sell it. It's their asset. It was their inheritance. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay.
The challenge comes a lot of times when they did not actually put it in writing that he must get the house. You see, that's when tradition and the law are not on the same page.
Okay.
I can give an example. Let's look at you know, the current disputes that we're finding in the big church. The big church, I don't want to call it by name.
Yes.
There's a big dispute there.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, and now it could have been a clear thing that the instructions are everything must go to this specific person. He must take leadership and continues. But if that was not in writing, we look at the law. When we run to the law, things might just be completely different. I spoke about the concept of last born.
Yeah.
The concept of last born works in other communities, and some concepts are saying it's the last born boy, not a woman. Then the woman who is the last born can want to challenge it. Then they run to court. Then there is a principle that we call primogeny, which looks at a female also being able to take up leadership or becoming an heir. So you've got challenges, but the minute you document it and it's very clear, it's in writing, then you avoid all this drama. I've seen there's a growing trend also when we're talking about family houses. People would say, I leave it to my last born child, so-and-so, provided that he doesn't sell it. Or they say, it is my wish that he doesn't sell it and must allow his siblings to come and stay should the need arise.
Okay.
We can do it like that. You can actually do it like that in your will. But I think we must also educate ourselves around the legal jargon. So the minute we say I'm bequeathing it to my last born child, it means now this is something, it's an inheritance that I'm passing on to him.
Yeah.
And then the same sentence, I go and say, it is my wish that his siblings be allowed to stay here. A wish. I think I'm saying to people, if you go and look at your will, and there is a word wish, just know it's exactly that. Means absolutely bogger.
How? Yeah.
It's
so yeah. So also, I mean, before we go back, because I see the time is hitting us a little bit.
Okay.
So because now obviously we need to talk about you know, things that are happening, the consequences, that, you know, all these kind of things. But now we're also trying to build each other here, right? So now me as let's say I was Bab Khumalo, and this family house, I don't want it to be lost, you know, because one of the things that I mention a lot, and I started to research around family homes, is the fact that, you know, we miss this generational wealth link, because now Bab Khumalo has passed on, and maybe the house has been transferred to the last born, then the last born goes and sells the house, right? And then life trap, you know, where do we come back to? You know, because home is home. If life shows you flames, like some of us has shown us flames, we're in home. So if that it's not existent, then it becomes a problem. So how can one be able to make sure that we have that preservation going on within, especially the family home, in this regard?
Yeah. You know, it's a very challenging one. You know, there's different avenues, which none of them I would recommend, just by the way. So I'm putting a disclaimer.
Yeah.
So the first one is we could actually put this family house into a trust.
Okay.
Depending on, you know, obviously if it's, you know, financially viable to do that. The second one that you would do is what we call attach limited rights to it.
Okay.
And the limited rights situation would be, you know what, there is fideicommisum. Now I'm going to be very technical. There could be a usufruct attached to it. There should be rights of habitatio, so that, you know, at least at some point, people, before they can move or sell, they still have to navigate this limited right. So limited right, how it works is you leave the asset to your last born child. You give other people, the siblings, the right to live in it, the right to use it, or you say, I leave it to you, last born, and then when you die, it must go to your last born. When the last born dies, go to the other last born. So it's what we call fideicommisum. None of those things that I've said I would recommend, because then you're finding that areas change. Today, Deep Kloof is a good area. In 10 years' time, it's a total disaster. But it's stuck. The asset is stuck with people. So you know, I think I look at it from circumstance to circumstance. But those are avenues that you could actually follow. But limited rights have a challenge, because then it needs to be registered on the title deed. And, you know, there's just a lot of unnecessary drama around it. And sometimes you can't even, you know, if you want to get more credit on the asset, you can't, because of these other challenges around it. So it can be very technical, but there is avenues. But I would look at it case by case.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I think then because we have about 7 minutes that left, so I think we can then go back to
Okay. So I think, you know, that I wanted to address around liquidity in the estate, and perhaps I was hoping we'll get to do a calculation, but we won't get to a calculation. Perhaps this is my other plea to say, maybe invite us again, we can do a calculation.
I know, we need more. We need more, Cicely.
I think we definitely need to do this. So there's 3 myths that I've put there. I mean, very self-explanatory. You can look at them. But you can also, I always say, you know, I like people taking certain slides, registering them. This is one of the slides that I think you can, you know, snapshot edit. These are the things that you need to look at when you're looking at an estate. So a lot of times people would be saying, you know what, the only thing that I need to be worried about is the executor's fees or estate duty, and they forget about a whole lot of other nitty-gritties. So there's quite a lot when you pass away. Passing away is expensive. It can cost the beneficiaries a lot of money. The first one is transfer costs on the fixed property, cancellation costs on bonds registered, liabilities without insurance. Bab Khumalo has an estate value of 20 million. He owes 10 million and he doesn't have cover. We said nothing about cover. So you can see it's a big expense against the estate. Tax obligations, very important. People, when they pass away, they don't understand that there is tax obligations like the CGT, there is tax obligations, you know, and a lot of times when one of the delays that we pick up when we're winding up deceased estate is that people's tax obligations or their current tax, income tax, are in a shamble. It's a mess. So those things, they have a funny way of following you to your grave, so they don't just disappear.
Yeah.
And then we've got special bequest. I spoke about maintenance and I spoke about accrual. You know, those are very important. They take precedence when we're actually looking at the at claims within the estate. Estate bank account charges, valuation, costs of assets, and advertising costs. This is now all these smaller nyana costs. On top of that, we've got estate duty. Remember, I said if your estate value is up to 3.5 million, cap it there, because between 0 and 3.5 million, you do not pay estate duty. Anything above that attracts estate duty. And that is, it can be very costly. Yeah. And then we've got executors' fees. Executors' fees are currently charged at 3.5% plus VAT. So that is the 3.5 of the value of your estate. So if your estate is about 3.5 million, times it by that 3.5%, you can see that is what you're going to pay towards executors' fees. And then we've got the master's fees. So there's a lot of, you know, smaller nyana things. I think in closing, Gavin, I just want to emphasize, I've heard people and I've spoken to people saying, you know what, my father passed away and he had a lot of money, we were living okay. And then all of a sudden, the bank or, you know, the financial institution is telling us that he was insolvent. And these are some of the challenges that you look at. When you look at Bab Khumalo, at least he still has about 10 million asset base. Otherwise, he died with a 20 million with an obligation of 10 million. It means he's left with 10 million. On the 10 million, we're going to tax him. Executors' fees, we tax on the 20 million. We don't minus the expense. So we charge him on that entire 20 million. On the estate duty, we're going to minus, we're going to say 20 million, we minus the 3.5, which is a rebate. So it's important that you know, how you are going to be taxed. Okay. And how to avoid it. So okay. That's my takeaway.
Yeah.
The last slide, I think this is just explaining when somebody passes away, what happens, the whole process. People think when you've passed away today, there was a will or there was no will, they think in 3 months' time, they'll be able to get the estate. It doesn't work like that. It's a process. And this page, I think we definitely need to do justice to it. It's quite complex.
No, definitely.
But
but it's long, eh? It looks long.
It is long. The process is long. The process is very long. So if you are lucky, your estate can be wound up between 6 to 9 months. If you are lucky and everything is in order. But a lot of times it takes long.
9 months.
It's quite a big process. 9 months.
So, okay, so maybe just a little thing, Yana, there. So when it comes to a life cover, right? Because most of the time we talk about life cover, bring in some kind of liquidity there, right? Yeah. So if there is no life cover, Okay, maybe just briefly take us through what happens to the life cover if it's in the mix with regards to the estate. Now, Bab Khumalo had a life cover of maybe 10 million. How does that affect the picture?
Okay. So now we've got a life cover that is going to come into the estate of 10 million. So remember, initially we said he's got 20 million, and in the 20 million assets, we're talking assets, and he's got liabilities of about 10 million, and then he's got a life cover of 10 million. So now it means in his asset base, Bab Khumalo has now 30 million, not 20. Can you understand it? So the impact in terms of the calculation now, estate duty, remember we're going to minus the 3.5, the amount that's left that is dutiable. We're going to be charging estate duty there. In terms of executors' fees, we're going to charge on the entire amount of 30 million. When I say 30 million, whether he's got expenses, we will deal with the expenses within the estate, but the expenses do not now deplete his amount by about 10 million. No. So estate value is 30 million because we've got cash liquidity of. The nice part with that is that we don't have an insolvency issue. He'll be able to cover all his liabilities.
Okay. All right.
Any questions?
All right, fantastic. So I think because of time, and definitely we need to do more of these sessions, and so we're going to be doing more. And I can see a lot of questions there, but unfortunately because of time, we have run out. So definitely there will be another session that we're going to have. And I encourage people then to please, when we ask for questions, give us those questions prior to us coming to these dinners, so that at least we can prepare, Ausi Remi can prepare for them much more, rigorously, if I may call it that way, So please be on the lookout for that. So we're going to we're going to do another one, definitely. So probably it will be next month, early next month, and then we're going to have that session again. Now, again, Ausi Remi, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for this valuable information that you keep on giving us. I mean, we are fed, I'm full, like very full. So very full. So I don't know, parting shots from you before we close it.
So yes, I think what we can do. There's nice questions there. For the benefit of everyone, maybe I can prepare the responses and then you can circulate them, because I think some of them are quite nice, and then we can have a follow-up. But in closing, I think this we're having quite nice discussion. We definitely are changing the narrative. We are not going to pass away with our wealth.
Definitely.
Not when we've got so much information.
We're gonna trap people. I mean, we've given you everything. So definitely, But thank you so much again. Maybe just to reiterate, the book, it's available. So hit me up 074 412 7614. So you can get your book. And again, next week we have Ausi Lulu Leklabe, who will be talking about the corporate wealth. We'll be doing the corporate wealth dinner. It's gonna be on fire. I met Ausi Lulu when I was doing my 1 month retreat. I think last month or 2 months back, and her story is amazing. Some of the things that you need to be able to pick it up. So please be on the lookout for that. And then follow the podcast. There's a podcast for the F's Financial Sermon, and there'll be some merchandising that we'll be pushing as well, and then some projects that we'll be doing. And then please, if you send us the email, there will be, because there are prizes to be won, we're going to be able to unpack that in terms of what it will entail. So the communication will be coming through, and it's all going to be fantastic. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us for this dinner. I hope that everybody was fed and you definitely enjoyed yourself. And again, it's Gavin Kabela. I am signing out. See you on the flip side.